What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Early Wedge. My name is Nejad, and today I am joined by Mike McClure. Rick Gaiman is traveling. He's been on the road quite a bit. He's traveling back home, I think. So we'll see him later on in the week. We've got Farzad in the chat already. Many of you in the chat, hit the like button if you could. Mike, Farzad says he's chilling right now, that Early Wedge is his new favorite, and that thank you for the Harris English hit. I got to give you credit too, because we hit the Bryson without Scottie,
Yep.
but then I also hit the Harris English without at 110 to 1, which of course got reduced to like 34, 33 to 1.
Right.
But it was a really good early wedge day. How was your DFS week though? Because I mean, you could have had 4 or 6s and still potentially made the money depending on what tournament you were in, but there were almost 0 6 for 6s and not as many 5 of 6s as normal. How did you fare?
I fared okay. Honestly, I thought it was going to be awful. I wasn't even following the DFS portion of it because I thought it was going to be so bad, but it was bad for everyone in what you mentioned, right? So like, I'm so used to at events like that, thinking you need 6 of 6, but it's also, I'm so used to following it and tracking it when you're like, signature event or no cut event things, right? So we had to keep in mind, you had the full field, you had the cut, you knew it was going to be there. And I was surprised to see that I ended up just a little bit down. I was trending towards breaking even the entire time. Had Bryson went ahead and won over Scottie, I probably would have slightly profited. But the ultimate thing that hurt would be just had a lot of Rory and not enough Scottie.
Yeah, I'll say this. I didn't have a great DFS week. Just kind of barely missed min cashing in the few tournaments that I played. Because, Mike and I don't play a ton of lineups. We play, the money side of it is a different question, I guess. But in terms of the number of lineups, I didn't have a lot. I did have some lineups that I switched off of with Rahm and Bryson, which certainly would have been a lot better than what I ended up with, which was a lot of Bryson and Rory, like we talked about on the Monday show. But like that's okay. Like DFS, whether it's in golf, PGA, or NFL or anything else, like you're obviously looking for the spike cash, but not all of them are going to give you even a min cash. That's just how that goes. But let's look forward, because we had a good betting week. For me, it wasn't a great DFS week. Let's talk about Colonial Country Club. Let's talk about what we got in front of us, because there's one big sort of elephant in the room here, and that's that Scottie Scheffler is playing this tournament, which shouldn't surprise anybody because of his Texas ties. But, coming off the PGA Championship, I think some people might think, hey, he's probably going to take the week off. That's not really how Scottie does it, especially with the Texas event. We got Josh putting up the scorecard here. One notable thing here, I think we're looking at let me double check the specs here, because I think we're looking at a par 70 that's 7,200 and change. Yeah, almost 7,300 yards, par 70, only 2 par 5s, Mike, which I think is interesting. This is a course where you're going to hear it from everyone. This is a positional track. Approach play, accuracy off the tee is certainly something you need to look at. Maybe putting you need to look at as well. You're not going to see a ton of long iron play. Those sort of middling proximities between 125 and 200. That's where most people are going to hone in on. Mike, any thoughts with that? Is that sort of how you've captured this event, or are you looking at other things as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be heavy approach, like most events are, but you're right. It is definitely positional. Driving distance, essentially irrelevant. You don't need to concern yourself with driving distance or club head speed or any really of the things that we talked about last week. It's obviously interesting that Scottie is playing it. It's a Texas event, so that, as you mentioned, is not a surprise. The one thing that I will add this week that I don't get a ton other than like really difficult places and like the Masters at Augusta, I always care about around the green play. I will care about around the green play here. That's something that gets weighted a little bit more heavily. Some of the shorter irons, as you mentioned already, the proximities, even like 100 to 125 yards, that's kind of going to be a bucket that I look at quite a bit.
Can I ask you something? Because we don't have you on the betting show tomorrow. That's last week we had sort of a different lineup because of the moving parts with the PGA Championship. Tomorrow, I do think it's me and Eric Cohen, Patrick McDonald, Jason Sobel, back to the old crew there. Shout out to Matt Every, by the way, who had Harris English top 5 on that show at 25 to 1. So we really hit Harris English hard. I had him in a matchup as well, and in some round matchups. But Mike, I want to ask you the Scottie Scheffler question, because you won't be on the show tomorrow at 7. He is plus 250 to win this tournament. And I think that's pretty much universal. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I am very much interested, and I've already made the decision. So I'm not going to allow you to convince me otherwise, but I do really want your opinion. I'm going to be betting the without Scottie Scheffler market. I pretty much already know who I'm going to bet on, but I haven't actually put it out there yet. Your thoughts on that? Typically, you don't like to do that, but I know you've dabbled in it before. Would this be a tournament you would entertain that? I know this is a DFS show, but I got to ask you this question right off the bat.
I don't mind it. It'll really come down to the number. I haven't locked in any outrights yet. I'm going to give you the names that I will be looking at, and it'll really depend on the number available as to whether or not I play the without Scottie market. If Scottie is a deserving favorite, I'm not going to have him at plus 250. I'm guessing it'll probably be in the 400 range. Now, guys that I want to bet and that I think can be bet without Scottie, Daniel Berger's number 2 for me, right behind Scottie in this field. Ryan Gerard, Bud Cauley, Aaron Rye. Those are the guys that I'm looking at pretty heavily.
Yeah, those are guys we're going to be looking at in DFS as well. I want to give a shout out to Sites501, who says he had a surprise min cash. I think like most people who min cashed were definitely surprised by their min cash last week. I'm assuming that min cash might have been a 4 out of 6, and you still got there. D Johnson is in here. Canadian Dad is in here. Thanks for being in here, everybody. Really appreciate you participating in the show. If you have plays that you like, whether it's betting or DFS related, let us know. We do have to get to Scottie Scheffler and his price and some of those guys that Mike was just talking about. We're going to do it right after this message from our partners.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
We are back on the Early Wedge. It's me and Mike, and we're talking Charles Schwab Challenge. Mike, we're going to bring up the board. We're going to bring up the DFS board, and we're going to use Rick's site over at rickrungood.com. While we're doing that, while Josh is helping us with that, I do want to ask you this question. I think I know the answer to it. It's from Bill Florian or Florian. I'm not sure if the J is silent or not. He says, do either of you ever play tiered contests? And if so, do you use the same strategies as the classic DFS? Thank you guys. Love the show. My guess, Mike, is you don't do the tiered contests. I don't either. Do you have an answer to this question?
I don't, not with any regularity anyway. There's a time, maybe once a year or so, I will kind of dabble. Generally, honestly, whenever I have, there's a guaranteed contest on DraftKings and it's not going to fill, and it's just overlay, and I'll toss some stuff in. I have more interest in it in sports like NFL and some of those, or like NBA on a random Wednesday night. I think that there's a little more value there. As far as in DFS, it's certainly going to be, or in golf, it's going to come down to an ownership game. And yeah, it's just not a focus for me, but you would definitely want to be concerned with ownership and weighing those probabilities, because it's just a smaller version of real DFS.
Yeah, I think that does answer your question, Bill, in terms of like the ownership question, how paramount that is going to be, like it always is in PGA DFS. All right, let's get to the board. This is courtesy of Rick Run Good. We've got it up here. Only 2 people in the 10K and above range. I guess this shouldn't surprise anybody. I mean, Scottie Scheffler at 13,700. But the only other man here is Tommy Fleetwood at a flat 10K. Obviously, a $3,700 difference. I have a feeling, Mike, that Tommy Fleetwood is just going to be very low owned for a variety of different reasons that we can get into. But I guess we should start with Scottie Scheffler. And I'd like to know how much Scottie you're getting to. Is this a situation where you're getting to a ton of Scottie, or is this a situation where we don't have a 5K range and he's priced up enough where it just makes it really hard to make lineups?
I think that I'll still get some Scottie. I'm about to make my first run here in a minute while we're on the show. So I will give you a better answer in about a minute, but I anticipate still having a bit of Scottie. And I do anticipate playing a non-Scottie lineup. Again, I'll play probably 3 lineups for this tournament. At least one of the 3 will be a without Scottie lineup. Just because I do like some guys at the top outside of him, like Daniel Berger, for example. I'm going to click run here in a second and see what it gives me. But I think that I'll definitely have Scottie lineup, and I'll definitely have a non-Scottie lineup.
While we're waiting for that, I'll tell you that it's just very hard to make a Scottie lineup. So, for example, And it's not hard to make lineups that just, you go on under 10K and you pick a few 9K guys and you go from there. But if you take Scottie Scheffler at 13,700 and you fit like a low 9K guy in there, like our guy Harris English from last week and perhaps this week as well at 9,200, it leaves you 6,775. And while there are some guys in the 6K range that I think are value, it's still the 6K range at the end of the day. This is top 65 in ties that make the cut. So if you're going to make a Scottie Scheffler lineup and you anticipate putting in one other quote stud, which you may not want to do. Maybe you want to drop to the 8K or the 7K range and settle it there. But if you want to do the Scottie plus one other stud, I mean, you are living in the 6K range for most of your other selections. Mike, what is that run telling you?
Initially, it gave me a decent amount of Scottie. I'm making a couple of tweaks, but it still wants to try to find a way to put Scottie in. So I made one little tweak here to see. And yeah, that did the trick. Yeah, I'm not going to get a lot of Scottie. It wanted Scottie, but I had some way too optimistic. So when I make the initial run, I guess to back up and tell you what happened, some of it initially is going to be like sportsbook odds driven. So when Scottie's plus 250 or plus 200, he's going to come in with a drastic projection. I just adjusted the projection closer to where my sim is to match to like a plus 400 Scottie, which would be a negative betting value on Scottie. If I do that, I'm not getting much Scottie. So it's like right on the edge. If you're in line with Scottie being at plus 250, you should play him. If you think that you're paying a tax to bet Scottie and he's shouldn't actually be plus 250, you probably aren't playing Scottie in your lineup. Either way, I got a ton of Aaron Ryan, Daniel Berger, essentially 100% of those two. So when you have 100% of those two, you're not playing Scottie.
That is very, very interesting. Just so everybody understands that we're on the same page, the implied win equity with a plus 250 for Scottie Scheffler, what's that number?
Well, I'm going to see if he's actually plus. Is he actually plus 250 everywhere?
He's plus 250. That's the number I've seen. I don't know if maybe it's 275.
So yeah, plus 250 is going to be 28.5%, basically rounded up to 29%, or think of it as 30% essentially. If he gets down to plus 230, that's 30%. I personally have him around plus 400, which is 20%. So I'm meaningfully lower than the market while still having him as the top golfer by a mile. Is there a 30% chance he wins the golf tournament? I don't think so, but I think a lot of people would probably say yes.
Right. But I think that distinction between what your sims say and what the actual number is really important here in terms of, I think 30, like, and Farzad says it in the chat too. I think 30%, I know it's Scottie Scheffler, but I think that's too high as well. 20% makes a lot more sense. And I just like how you discussed what the DFS implications of that are as well. Okay, so talk to me about Tommy Fleetwood before we get to the 9K range. I assume Tommy Fleetwood didn't pop up. I mean, he's not popping up for me. It's not a guy I'm going to play.
Yeah, not popping up for me. I haven't really liked his approach play of late all that much. The putting has not been super good. I don't know. I think that when you look at this field over the last 24 rounds, total strokes gained, he's 10th in this field. That's not very good for the price point. For 10K being the second most expensive golfer, I can agree with the price point on Daniel Berger. I can't with Tommy Fleetwood currently this week. But he does carry name value. And if people find it hard to play Scottie, he might still get owned a little bit. So I'm going to be out on Fleetwood here.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm going to be out on Fleetwood as well. Let's drop to that 9K range because we've been kind of dancing around it, talking about a lot of guys. I think I agree with you on at least one of the guys you mentioned. I don't know that I'm going to get there on Daniel Berger. I'm just putting that out there at 9,900. We've got Jordan Spieth in this range at 9,800, Hideki 9,600. Then it goes Matt McNeely, JT Poston, Bobby Mack, Harris English, Aaron Rye, and we round it out with Keith Mitchell. I think my three favorite, and this might be this is a little bit of a price thing too. JT Poston, Harris English, and Aaron Rye. I like those three quite a bit. I kind of like Matt McNeely, although the metrics don't really sing to me. I understand the Daniel Berger argument a lot too. I think this 9K range is rich, and I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want to build in this 9K range in a big way.
Yeah, I think the 9K range is extremely rich, which I think you definitely, for me, I'm getting two 9K guys. When I made the tweak to Scottie, I'm getting two 9K guys in essentially every lineup. So for me, they're going to be Berger and Aaron Rye. I think that Aaron Rye will be popular for good reason. I think that living in the nines is going to be a little more appealing for me now than Scottie lineups.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I think it's probably going to be more appealing to me. I will split it. I will play a little bit of Scottie as well. I really like how JT Poston is trending, particularly with his approach play. I mean, it's really rounding into form, and we know the putter has already been there for JT Poston. Has some good history at Colonial, so I like Poston. It certainly fits the course profile with just being generally accurate off the tee. Again, approach coming into form, and then the putter. And I like Harris English. It's hard for me to, especially after last week where I was on him, it's hard for me to come off of Harris English. He's just playing really good golf. And to be honest with you, like the metrics, like the thing about Harris English that's really interesting is that if you listen to his post-round interview, post-round 4 interview, he didn't look satisfied. Like I feel like this guy is on a mission. This is somewhat of what we were seeing last week or on this show, what we were talking about, that Harris English is really coming into form. And I think he can absolutely outright win this tournament. I think his number in the without market, which I'm going to be addressing, is like 30-1. I think that's a perfectly fair number on Harris English. So I like Harris English. I like JT Poston. You mentioned Aaron Rye. I'm in on him. Is there anybody else in this 9K range, whether it's contrarian or I know you mentioned Berger, like anybody you're thinking about playing in the 9K range?
Yeah. So I might play a little Keith Mitchell as well. I think that he's probably going to get squeezed a little bit on ownership because I think a lot of people are going to want Aaron Rye for $100 more. And there's a couple 8K guys that I think are really good. So I like Poston as well, though. A lot of these guys rate pretty well. The overall, like this 9K range is so strong in this field. Like I think that they're like, looking at it right now, like I am comfortable playing Daniel Berger for sure. I'm comfortable playing Poston, English, Rye, Mitchell. I mean, I don't hate Bobby McIntyre here. Probably not going to get to it, but and then Jordan Spieth in Texas. 9K range is incredible here.
So just to give everybody an idea, and I'm doing this literally right now on my phone, actually, which is why I'm kind of looking over to the right here and there. So I just talked about what the Scottie with Harris English lineup looks. And I was just looking for a low 9K range guy at 9,200. And that leaves you with 6,775. And I'm not saying this is better. I'm not saying it's going to simulate better in terms of like projected points, but Harris English, JT Poston, and Aaron Rye. So 3 like lower 9K guys. You could throw Daniel Berger in here. It's not going to change much.
Yep.
It leaves you with 7,433, which is just a lot easier to build around 7,400 than the 6,775, and you're getting an extra golfer in here. Again, none of these guys are named Scottie Scheffler, so it might not project as well. But again, if you would put Berger in there, pick 3 9K guys, any 3 you want, you're still going to have plenty of money left over to round out your lineup with guys that you think are going to make the cut. All right, let's take a look at the 8K range. I mean, we did just kind of pass over Mike Hideki and Jordan Spieth. I mean, are you into playing either of them?
I think that again, we talk about this every week, but there's a price point and ownership combo that would make either one a great play. I don't mind leaning into Spieth in a Texas event personally. He's played okay golf. I really played pretty well golf, pretty well of late. I don't plan to play Hideki at all, but I could play Spieth, but certainly won't be my priority. I really want Berger and Aaron Rye first.
I'm very intrigued, and it might be kind of flat across the board for the most part in the 9K range, but I'm very intrigued to see what ownership looks like. Everybody, just so you know, the Wednesday show, the live chat where we like to talk about ownership, where ownership stands, it's a good time to talk about it. We usually do that after the early edge at 10:30. We're moving this one this week, and maybe for further weeks too, to the middle of the afternoon, actually late afternoon. I believe it is going to be at 4:00. So keep that in mind. We're going to have a live chat. It's actually better that it's in the afternoon because it's going to give us even more information as it relates to the weather, as it relates to ownership, and a lot of other things. So 4:00 on Wednesday, that's going to be our live chat. I'm very curious to see where this ownership is. once we get there. All right, let's take a look at the 8K range, Mike. There's a lot of interesting names here, and I think a lot of names that are going to be relatively popular. We've got Siwoo Kim, who was great, pretty great last week for the most part. Davis Thompson, maybe not the best course fit, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't play him. Ben Griffin starting to come on. Davis Riley won here last year and played really well last week. Brian Harmon, short course, makes sense. JJ Spawn, same thing. Michael Kim, Novak, Lucas Glover rates out really well. Akshay Bhatia, Harry Hall coming on strong. Like, you could literally make an argument for every single one of these guys. So I'm curious, which of these guys are you honing in on?
Yeah, you mentioned Davis Riley. He's popping really, really well here for me at 8,600. Again, success here. Played pretty well last week. If you look at total strokes gained in this field, I talked about Berger being 2. Davis Riley is number 3 over the last 24 rounds of golf. He is 3rd in total strokes gained, 10th tee to green. The proximity bucket that I like a lot here is 100 to 125. He is 6th in this field in that one. And then around the greens themselves, which is, again, I play that a lot at the Masters. I like it a little bit here. He is 7th in that one as well. He checks a lot of boxes. I know that he could definitely get popular because of the success, but profiles here very well for a reason. So he'd be the first one in. Siwoo Kim at 8,900 fits a lot of the boxes as well, other than the putter itself. Love him here. Other 8K guys, those are the top 2 for me. I'm
looking
over a little bit. Yeah.
I'm looking at builds because I feel like there's a few names I like here, and I'll comment on the build thing in a second. I think Davis Riley is a good name. I'm happy to come off of him if he's going to be really popular, by the way, but we'll see about that. Ben Griffin, I think, is a guy that has plenty of upside on a course like this. I think a lot of people are going to be interested, Mike, in Lucas Glover because he's just such a great course fit. Checking out his history here. His history is pretty great as well, actually. So I think Lucas Glover, and I think Harry Hall might get a little bit of ownership because of his price there. But if you do, because we keep talking about Dodgers fan 330 says, I really like Harry Hall this week. And this is a guy we know can really putt too, and just really kind of win with the flat stick. So we talked about the Scottie, like low 9K lineups. We talked about the 3 9K lineups, or 3 guys in the 9K range and what that leaves you with, which was around 7,400 and change. I do want to check out, because this is a possible build here, what a Scottie and 2 8K lineup leaves you. Like, let's say Davis Riley, Scottie Scheffler, and let's go down to Lucas Glover. I think that I thought that could be a popular build, but it leaves us with 65-33, which I don't think people are going to want to engage in. So again, it goes back to the Scottie lineups. You can do Scottie and a 9K guy, but it's leaving you with 67-75. You can do Scottie and an 8K guy, but I don't know that you can choose 2 8K guys. And I just think that's an interesting dynamic, Mike. What do you think about lineups that are going to do Scottie and just live in the 7K range? Because that would be one of the other options.
I think that's going to be the option, honestly. If you're playing Scottie, it could be like, if you like Davis Riley or Glover, like, so you really like that 8K guy, I think it's Scottie 8K, then 7s and a 6. But I think it's difficult. I think you're sacrificing a lot of the quality of your lineup if you're playing Scottie and 2 8Ks. When you're leaving 6,500, in recent weeks, we've talked about how strong the 6K range had been on some of those weeks. This is not one of them. And it's, this field is a little different, and the pricing obviously scales with it. So the lack of some of that top tier talent in this, top to mid tier talent in this field changes that 6K range quite a bit. So I am not very interested in a Scottie plus 2 8s, just because 6,500 average for 3 spots, literally half your lineup, with this $6,000 range just doesn't excite me at all.
I'll say this. I wrote down, technically typed out, what was it, 9 6K guys that I at least wanted to consider. And I'm pretty sure like only 3 of them are going to make the cut. Like, these are guys that, like, I'm willing to play in DFS, but are, probably not very good plays. That just kind of, Mike, speaks to what you're talking about here. We talked about Hall a little bit. We talked about Lucas Glover. Any thoughts on it? Obviously Davis Riley, I mentioned Ben Griffin. Any thoughts on a guy like JJ Spawn or Andrew Novak, who's been coming on, or Siwoo Kim, who feels like a very good course fit as I look at his history as well? and it's actually not very good, at least not his recent history here. But either way, seems like a pretty good course fit. Any of those names ringing to you?
So Siwoo Kim, yes. My top two in this range are Davis Riley and Siwoo Kim.
Okay.
They are expensive. Siwoo Kim is 8,900 right there, but I like him quite a bit. Really checks all the boxes other than the putter. The putter has not been great. Everything else though, and he's one, again, I keep mentioning it because I don't use it a lot. Like I said, Augusta, Colonial, the around the green. I think it's underrated here. I think that it's important. That's where Siwoo Kim really thrives. So I think he's a great play that could get overlooked simply because the 9K range is loaded and he's 8,900.
Yeah, Joseph Boza saying last year Scottie didn't have it. He backdoored a runner-up finish. He lost by 5 to Davis Riley. I mean, I guess it's hard to say he didn't have it when he finishes second, but the year prior he finished T3, and the year prior to that he finished solo second. I mean, it feels like, it's certainly Scottie's to lose, but again, that doesn't mean I'm playing him in DFS. I do fear him, but your thoughts, Mike, when you see a Scottie Scheffler T2, T3, second place over the last 3 years, that is at least somewhat intimidating, is it not?
Yeah, it is a little. I think that it's always important to consider the strength of the field and things like that too. But yeah, Scottie is the best golfer on the planet, and I think it's not up for debate. I think it's just the fact.
Yeah, and I mean, to the extent there's an argument against Scottie, this is not exactly the type of track and the type of difficulty, especially at a positional course off the tee, where Scottie's going to have this major advantage. He's still better than everybody else. But if the argument to fade Scottie is perfectly understandable, but he has done pretty well here and come close to winning each of the last 3 years, or at least that's what the standings say. Joseph is pointing out that it was sort of a backdoor runner-up finish. All right, we got to get to the 7K range, talk a little bit about the 6K range, and we're going to do that right after this message from our partners.
Jaden Shaw faces her former club. North Carolina battles San Diego in an NWSL showdown. Sunday on CBS Sports Network. They know me.
We are back on the early wedge, and we got to get to the 7K range, Mike. We got Zach Kasenki in here. He says, Hisatsune, only 7,100. Seems like highway robbery. This guy has been rock solid. That's true. Farzad chiming in, Ryu, of course, that's Ryu Hisatsune, is a steal at that number. Let's get to that 7K range. There's certainly a lot of guys to talk about here, Mike, and so we've got this punched up. I've got a few guys that I don't think are going to be super popular that I like. And I'll just start off with, I like Thorbjorn Olesen a lot. He actually might be one of my outrights in the without market. I like Alex Smalley a little bit. I think Matt McCarty is really sneaky at 7,200. And I think I'd be willing to take a chance on Nico Echeverria. But certainly Rio, there's so many other guys. Taylor Moore, your guy is in here. Sam Stevens. Christian Bezuidenhout, who played pretty well last week and has a really good history here. Tom Kim is in this range. You got a lot of ball strikers. You got Bud Cauley, who you mentioned, and Ryan Gerard. Mike, are you starting at the top with our 7,900 Gerard and a 7,800 Bud Cauley?
Those would be the top two for me, Sia. I like them both. I think that they're both extremely playable, and you can make some really, really great lineups. When we talked about how I personally wanted to start with Aaron Rye and Daniel Berger. And when you do that, you're left with 7,700. So say you like Gerard and Cauley, all of a sudden you've got Gerard and Cauley in a lineup. And, oh yeah, I still have 7,600 for the last two spots.
Yeah.
The last two spots. So you could play your Siwoo Kim at 8,900 and a 6K guy. There's a lot that you could do. You could play a mid guy in the eights like JJ Spawn. And there's just so many options when you build that way. So I think these guys are going to be, it depends on where Scottie's ownership comes in, but I don't think they're going to be as popular as they need to be because of Scottie. I like Gerard and Cauley a lot though.
It's so hard to me because I think the pricing, I think they did a good job with pricing this week. It should be hard to build Scottie lineups, right? With that in mind, do you have any sort of guesstimate? Can't believe I just said the word guesstimate on what Scottie's ownership might be? I mean, are we looking at like you're in a tournament like this normally, like even with like softer price, or I should say with softer pricing, it could be up to like 40%. But at the number he's at now, I wonder, is this going to be more like in the 30% range?
Yeah, I was going to say 35, like
Okay.
33, 35. I mean, still a lot, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting. You hear a number like that, and like you think about how likely is he to win. Market says it's 30% or 28. I say it's 20, but you may not even need him to win to still be optimal. Like if he finishes T2, T3, he's probably optimal still.
Yeah.
Which is, it's interesting. I think it'll probably be 33, 35% though.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We'll keep an eye on that. Let's go down to the sort of the lower. Let's go below, I should say, like 7,400, right below Kevin Yu. Tom Hoagie, Mike, at 7,400. Eric Cole. These are the guys that are like vintage, not necessarily accurate off the tee, but maybe can just be accurate off the tee and be dialed in on approach and with the putter. I think both of those guys are interesting. I think it's interesting prices as well. Gary Woodland at 7,300. I actually had him in my biggest DFS lineup last week, which in retrospect was probably a mistake because I wasn't really that big on him. He just ended up in the lineup for some reason. That definitely cost me some money. But in these club down courses, Gary Woodland usually succeeds quite well. I think Jake Knapp will probably have no ownership because of what his reputation is. I think he's interesting. And then we go down to like Matt McCarty, who I like, a shorter hitter, can be accurate, can be dialed, especially lately on approach. Anybody sort of striking you in this low 7K range?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Hoagie and Eric Cole. I like Eric Cole quite a bit. Hoagie as well. I think that Hoagie will get clicked because he's still got a little bit of name value, and 7,400, it kind of stands out. But Hoagie and Cole are 4th and 5th in this field in strokes gained approach over the last 24 rounds of golf. I like both of them. McCarty, you mentioned, projects pretty well for me here. There's so many in the 7s, which again, these are all golfers that in other events would have been in the 6s, right? So like when we're talking about the 6K range versus 7K range, it's all relative with the strength of the field, but there are a lot of options here. The top 4 for me though would definitely be Gerard 1, Bud Colley 2, Eric Cole 3, Tom Hoagie 4, and Matthew McCarty 5.
I will say this about Cole, and we had Josh pull up his recent metrics, and he's just been a monster on approach. His course history isn't very good, and I think you could, that could just be random, but you could attribute that to his inaccuracy off the tee, and that's where Eric Cole usually lives. He's not necessarily accurate off the tee. But again, I did want to point out, like, I like Cole too, but like, I have this sort of like checklist that I do, Mike, by hand. And I put a bunch of golfers on it, and then I just start kind of like crossing guys off and incorporating new metrics. Cole, the approach play, yeah, excellent. Accuracy and history at Colonial, not that great. So I'm just pointing that out. I'm not saying he's a bad play. I think he has tremendous upside. Ryo Satsune is in that 7,100 range. Joe Highsmith, who has been okay recently and was especially good at the beginning of 2025. He's a flat 7K. We've got Doug Gim, a great ball striker. Austin Eckroat, used to be a good ball striker in that 7,100 range. Here we are. Dion Sari says, do you like Highsmith at 7K? Any thoughts on this low 7K range, this lower 7K range?
Yeah. Rio is definitely the best for me at 7,100. I don't mind Lee Hodges at 73. I'll call that lower 7 range. I think he's good. Doug Gim, as you mentioned, I think is playable. Toasty, I'll always mention Toasty. He can't putt at all, but checks the boxes on the proximity bucket that I really like. 100 to 125. He's very, very good there. So Alejandro Toasty he's playable.
Can we bring up, Josh, the profile of Hisatsune? Because the one sort of red flag for me, and he has been good, his approach play from what I saw, particularly recently, wasn't particularly good. Okay, I'm clearly looking at the wrong thing here then, because this looks pretty great to me. Obviously he had a slip up at the CJ Cup, but outside of that, the putter, the approach play, it's been pretty great. I think these guys are right that are saying this guy's probably mispriced.
Yeah, I think he's mispriced for sure. In this field, nothing would change if he was 7,900 versus 71, right? I think that's probably closer to where he should be. Maybe even cracking the 8s.
That's fair. That is absolutely fair. And I know some people are comping, when we look at like Innisbrook, for example, I think when we look at positional tracks and things of that nature, that's certainly a comp where he finished T4 and gained everywhere. So I think Hisatsune, I'm going to have to take a second look because I had him on my list and then I kind of took him off. And now I think I need to put him right back on. All right. Speaking of lists, let's get to the 6K range. D Johnson, Rick Funcannon. Oh, wow. Rick Funcannon says snipers, Nico Horner over 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs, just cash. That's from the early edge this morning. If you don't watch the early edge, it's every Monday through Friday at 10 o'clock. And snipers, incredibly sharp. Glad to see, Rick. Thanks for the update that one has already cashed. All right. The 6K range has some names, Mike. I mean, Ricky Castillo's, Jesper Svensson, Celinda, these guys are names, but they're not necessarily great course fits. But again, That doesn't mean that they can't play well here. Charlie Hoffman, I don't think it's a bad name. Sammy Valimaki, I think, is going to jump out to people, and that makes a ton of sense. Henrik Norlander, just an absolute monster on approach. Doesn't have good course history here for whatever that's worth, but he has been great with a lot of the metrics that we're looking for here at 6,800. We got Matt Kuchar down here at 6,800 in this upper part of the 6K range. Any names jump out at you?
Yeah, it's got to be Norlander, the one you mentioned. Just the approach play, the proximity buckets match really well. And honestly, in his last 24 rounds, he's still 11th in this field in total strokes gained. So yeah, it stands to me as someone that's kind of all upside. Someone I would want to pair with Scottie or with my 2 or even potentially 3 9K golfers in a lineup. When you dip into the 6s, if you got the 6,800 to spend, I think Norlander would be the first click in for me. Andrew Putnam at 6,700 would be right there. Joel Damon is interesting to me. He can't putt at all, but he is interesting because the lack of the distance, the approach play is good. Proximity buckets check out for me. And then if you need to dip down below 6,500.
Can I guess what you're going to say?
Yeah, you know what I'm going to say, but let's hear it.
Brian Campbell.
Brian Campbell is one of the 2. I was going Danny Walker first.
Oh, there you go. My guy. Yep. Oh, how did I guess that first? Okay, fair enough.
Yep. Danny Walker was the first one at 6,400. I think that you could do worse if you needed, again, to dip that low and fill out a lineup.
So I'm going to mention the 6K guys that I mentioned that I wrote down earlier in the show. And there's a lot of crossover with what Mike just said. Valimaki is certainly one of them. Norlander, Carson Young at 6,500, I think is very interesting. Carl Phillips, the metrics aren't going to speak to you, and we know he's won. He won over at Puerto Rico, but I just feel like from a talent standpoint, that's not a bad option, notwithstanding that he doesn't feel like he's playing well enough to play him in DFS. I mentioned Brian Campbell, Quade Cummins. Now we're getting into reaches. Quade Cummins, I don't hate. Danny Walker, you mentioned, Mike, and then Ben Coles, I think, is a decent course fit. You're really reaching here. You're in the very, very much the low 6K range. And I'm going to mention David Lipsky. If you can, Josh, go over to David Lipsky's course history. His history here over to if you can go, there's multiple ways you can do that on RRG, but his metrics, first of all, he's a shorter hitter. There's not much to like except for this part. If you're watching us on YouTube, T9, T16, T48, not in that order. So his latest one was a T9. Mike, I'm just saying, he's 6,200. Yeah. We've seen Lipsky before. Now, if you go back, Josh, and just click off Charles Schwab Challenge and look at what he's actually been doing lately, it's not a great look, but he does seem to profile well at a course like this. Again, all you're seeing here is red and missed cuts. Zurich Classic T4, he had a partner. Punta Cana T31, that's not bad. Outside of that, it's just missed cuts everywhere. But I'm just saying 6,200, great course history here for some reason. Throwing that out there. Mike, anybody else in the 6K range that you'd consider? Or for that matter, Mike, anybody that in your simulations, did you notice if any 6K guys kind of popped in there?
I mean, we're far removed from him being a contender on the PGA Tour, but Webb Simpson is the 6,300.
Wow. Where are they now?
Right. So, it's a course that doesn't require distance. He's still going to be good around the greens. It's a long shot, but I always think that these are the kind of events that someone like Webb Simpson, like if they find something and put it together for a round or two, I think it's more likely to come in an event like this.
I mean, it's funny. I like to kind of look at the low 6K range and be a little nostalgic for guys that we actually played in DFS at like reasonable prices.
Yeah.
I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. I mean, I'm seeing here, let's see, Brandt Snedeker, who for the record at 6,100. I mean, if you feel like you want to go that low, I don't think is a terrible play. Patton Kazire used to be kind of a first round monster. Luke List is down here at 6,200. Lonto Griffin, Harry Higgs, who's recently played at least okay for a couple of rounds. I mentioned Ben Coles. I mean, it's interesting, man. It's tough to stay on the PGA Tour. Like, these guys don't do anything anymore.
Yeah. And I should mention, I talked about how I didn't like the 6K range here. I don't mind playing a 6K guy, and I'm probably going to. What I was trying to emphasize there, I guess, is I don't think this is the tournament where you want 3 of them in your lineup just to get Scottie in your lineup. Right.
And the only way you can play Scottie and only go down to the 6K range once is if the rest of your lineup is 7K guys. Like, it's just really hard to get just one 6K guy and Scottie Scheffler and anybody in the 8K or not. I'm sure it's possible, or the 9K range. It's just extremely hard to do.
Yeah, it's super difficult to do. I'm leaning more towards 9K, 8K kind of lineups this week. It looks like
very, very interesting. We'll definitely get a good look at ownership. It's going to help educate some of our decisions in here. Any closing thoughts on this tournament, Mike? It sounds to me like it's either Scottie lineups or it's 9K lineups. And you did sound like you were pretty big on Daniel Berger and Aaron Rai. Is there, whether it's the 9K range or any other range, is there like a third guy in that you just immediately were like drawn to, probably going to make a lot of your lineups?
It'll be Gerard. I'm just going to continue to ride his recent success, recent form. I think that Berger, Gerard, and Rai will be a very popular start for me.
All right, fair enough. Let's see. Zach Kasenki says, man, I like Matty Schmid in the 6,000s. I can't say I like Matty Schmid. I feel like this isn't really the course for him where he can take advantage of his driver. Let's see. Hank Byers going the nostalgia route. Ryan Palmer. He got bad pretty fast. He is a Texas guy. Yeah.
Texas guy. Yeah.
But we've had other Texas events this year. 3 others? And he has not shown up, unfortunately. Jeff Stenberg whispers Michael Thorbjornsen. Yeah. Mike, what do you think about him? Because he's clearly talented and he's clearly really showing up. This is one of those situations where like maybe not the best course fit because he's a monster off the tee. But again, if there's confusion there sometimes, because that doesn't mean he's not going to do well here. It just means he's not able to take advantage of this big weapon, but he could still be great, right? I mean, are we thinking about guys like that? Or are we Xing them off the list?
He's not on my list. The only reason is he like you mentioned it perfectly. Like he definitely has the skill set to go play great golf here and go contend. But you generally want to deploy a lot of players, unless it's just an elite player like Scottie. You want to deploy these kind of guys where, they truly have an edge with their biggest weapon. And that's for him. It's going to be, brute forcing his way around a golf course. And that's not this at all. So if I wanted to do that with someone who was like super long or, great off the tee like that, I need them to at least be able to putt. And the knock on Thorb is still the putter for me. So I just
short game in general. Yeah.
Right. So like, I don't think that this is the spot for it.
All right. Yeah. Jeff, I'm very sorry. We're going to have to agree to disagree on Michael Thorbjornsen this week, but looking forward to playing him, particularly later on in the year. All right. Well, Mike, I think that's going to do it for now. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we've got our betting show tomorrow at 7:00. We're going to try to string 2 really good shows together. I should say 2 weeks together in the betting department. And then, of course, we've got the live chat. It moves from 10:30 on Wednesday to 4:00 on Wednesday. So make sure you check that out on the SportsLine YouTube channel. May not have a Friday recap show, but we will be doing the live show on Sunday. But good news, a lot of you asked for that show to be a little bit earlier. 1 o'clock was an okay time, but there was a lot of constructive criticism saying, hey, can you guys do this show, that Sunday show, live betting show, a little bit earlier? So I think we're going to do that. We're going to try it out Sunday, I believe at 11 o'clock. So tune in for that. We're going to have a lot more to talk about, a lot more matchups to talk about, a lot more ways for you to get your money in on a Sunday, hopefully in the positive. Mike, hopefully will be with us during that show. And we've got rest of the week. We had that in the lower third there, courtesy of Josh, Chris Kish in the chat, Hank Byers, Rick Funcan, and Jeff Stenberg, Zach. Everybody, thank you for being in here. On behalf of Josh on the 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s, and Mike McClure, this is the Early Wedge. See you next time.